Hey, good evening, everybody. Brandon and I are back for another episode of the Missouri Liberty Report, so give me just a moment. We will start the recording and proceed into talking about everything from geriatric presidential candidates to Hawaii wildfire. You can't get much more of a mixed bag than that. So let's start the recording and let's kick this bad boy off.
In the restaurant of life, we're putting freedom back on the menu. It's the Missouri Liberty Report with John Williams, working with grassroots organizations and legislatures to make Missouri the freest state in the nation. Let freedom ring.
All right, folks, and we are back with another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Thanks so much for joining me once again. With, as always now, I guess you'd say. You can't say as always, but now with co-host Brandon Daugherty, who's, this is what, 3 weeks now, Brandon, that you've joined in, as co-host, correct? Around 3 weeks?
Third or fourth. This is the fourth week, because we had one before Bill Slants, and then this is the second one after.
Okay, great. Yeah, old man brain at it again. Here we go. I'm just having more and more. I don't know. Okay, I have to start before we go any further. I have to start out because I was going to say I'm having a lot of Biden moments. Can I just? I have to say something because we're going to go into the presidential debate and everything a little bit. I have to say something now. Because I was thinking about this today, because, you go on X, you go on Facebook, there's just clips of Biden and his gaffes. I have to say, do we not, can we agree that, yes, Biden's policies are god-awful, we don't like them, we don't think they're good? Can we also agree that Jill Biden and a lot of people in the DNC should be arrested for elder abuse? And I only say that because these same people want to make policies on health care. They think government should run health care. Well, if they're going to treat an elderly man who clearly doesn't have all his mental faculties anymore, who clearly is struggling day to day just to walk and talk and put together coherent sentences, are these the type of people that you want in charge of health care for your parents or grandparents? If they will do anything such as abuse, again, I don't have much love for Joe Biden, or especially his policies, foreign or domestic. But if these people will treat an elderly person like this so that they can be, which it's not really secret, but they act like they're secretly behind the scene, controlling the reins of government, are these the same people you want making healthcare decisions for you if the government completely takes over, if everything's government-run insurance completely, single-payer system, however, are these the people you want making what could be very important healthcare decisions for you and your family? Because that frightens the hell out of me, I must admit.
Well, I'll just say the government should have very little, if no, involvement in your decisions for your personal health care to begin with, especially for anyone over the age of 18. Clearly Joe Biden wants to be president. So it's not like they're forcing him to do something that he wouldn't normally want to do anyway. It's that I wonder how much of it is really like people, like he's obviously not going to want to step down. It's going to look bad on his legacy to do it. So whether it's criminal what they're doing, it's borderline criminal because he's clearly not all there. And that debate last night, we already knew this, but to anyone who is just mildly paying attention or was thinking he might be mentally capable, it's clear that he's not. But it's an embarrassment on the establishment to have Joe Biden perform in a debate like that, because it proves that he's not the one making the decisions anyway. Like you said, it's his handlers and all of the people who trot him out there. They're the ones making these decisions, making these healthcare decisions for you anyway. And so just trotting him out in public once once every couple days, I guess, is just how they. It does seem wrong to make him keep going out there and making a fool of himself, but if he keeps signing up to do it at a certain point, how much rights do we have to stop him?
No, you're absolutely right. And just continue on with this subject. I mean, I get on X this morning. I'm sitting in the parking lot before work, eating my breakfast, and I'm seeing posts from people now. Now, mind you, folks, I didn't watch the debate. I can't bring myself to do it. I got on X when I got home for like 2 minutes, scrolling through, and there were I think it was Matt Kibbe. It might have been Matt Taibbi. I don't remember. I think it might have been Matt Kibbe. They had a, presidential debate watch stream, And the first thing I see is they introduce President Biden, and he comes walking out, and he's like, "Hey, folks, how you doing?" And the guy says, what folks is he talking to? There's no audience. So I was like, oh, boy, that's not a good way to start. You're just being introduced, and you've already kind of had a mental lapse there. And that could be just that's the old man part. You say hello to people as you enter a room. So, but there are people on X this morning like, oh, Biden got him there. And I'm like, Biden got who where? Now, again, people were very, very selective with the clips that they put on social media to make their guy look like the big winner. But it is rather telling when the people at CNN and MSNBC are just like shell-shocked by his performance, and then they're putting out all these things about they had to go through and say he was wrong on this one. He was wrong when he said this. That's not true. They were correcting a bunch of stuff that he had said. And then I think Nate from Good Morning Liberty put out a tweet that said, look at the search results after and during the campaign. There were two. DNC, and it spiked big time. And then it hurts my brain and heart to say this. Gavin Newsom's name got searched heavily, spiked way up. Now, this was during debate and after debate. People started looking up Gavin Newsom because I don't know what you've heard, Brandon, from your perspective, but there have been theories that they're going to let Biden go out there, fumble around. People are going to say, you can't run him again. And then they're going to be like, okay, well, the DNC has decided that Gavin Newsom's going to replace Joe Biden as the presidential nominee. And I don't know, but suddenly last night, his name in search engines it blew through the roof.
I couldn't imagine. Here's credit to Joe Biden and his team back in 2020 when they picked Kamala Harris to be his VP. She's not stepping aside. So if they're gonna try to get Gavin Newsom at the top of the ticket, they're gonna have to bypass Kamala Harris, which is going to infuriate the Black Caucus members in the Democratic Party. So they can try it because Kamala Harris is not the answer for the Democratic Party. They know that. She cackles too much. She can't get through any press conferences without sounding like a complete moron. So she's out of the question. Whether or not they can bypass Kamala to get Gavin Newsom to the top is going to be tough to say. Biden came out today and was like, I'm not dropping out and I will be there at the next debate in September. So we'll see. If they try to make any big sudden moves without the voters of the Democrat Party, not that the Democrat Party doesn't screw over their own people for every presidential election since Hillary Clinton in 2016, but I think if they try to do this without the consent of the Democrat voters, without having a primary, it's not going to work. Also, Gavin Newsom's too far left. He's got some of the worst leftist policies that have ruined California, and a lot of people believe that. So I don't think he's the guy. That's the thing about Joe Biden, is that he's the only one left who even is considered moderate on the Democrat Party, because everyone else had to sell out to keep their left-wing status whenever AOC and the Squad became popular. So like I said, we'll see. I don't think Gavin Newsom will actually get put at the top of the ticket, but I've been wrong before.
Yeah, I mean, time frame and all, you wonder if it's beneficial for them to, do something like that in such a short period of time before the election. Because if you're going to change hands on the ship, I mean, you've got what, about 4 months till the election? Do they have enough time to put somebody else in and get him ready for debating and going out and, shaking hands and then just spouting the maximum amount of BS that he can in a short period of time to try to get people to vote for him? Because speaking of that, because I was talking to somebody today, and they said, I said, well, God, you got all those pictures of California, pandemic and afterwards, and the absolute disgusting state of California. That's kind of hard to cover up. Well, Tom Martz and I were talking back and forth, and he said he was watching a news video from a Sacramento news station that was videotaping the homeless camps along the Sacramento River. And they called it some sort of nature encampment or something. And he said, I'm yelling at the video, those homeless folks are crapping and peeing in the damn river. And which is probably true, but that's how they were framing it. They were framing it as, this is just a nature encampment. Okay, well, if you have less than 2 brain cells to rub together, you might believe that. But anybody with a working brain who can be somewhat objective and truthful with themselves knows that's definitely not a nature encampment. That's definitely just homeless people found a good spot to pitch a tent and hang out. But it does show how far the media will go and what kind of word screw they'll perform to try to pull the wool over people's eyes. And the sad thing is, some people will turn around and spout that same nonsense.
Oh, yeah. Like you said, the only people who believe all of the lies that Gavin Newsom tells are the people who already live in California. Like, he's not a moderate in any way. I will say, to your point a minute ago, though, he is a very well-polished politician. He is very, very good at what he does. And he's smart. I mean, you wouldn't be the governor of California without being either Arnold Schwarzenegger, who came into it famous, or being really, really smart. And so, I mean, you're obviously a criminal. You're a crook. Most likely than not. But he's very polished as a politician. So I think he's a great candidate if you need someone on the fly. If you just have to throw somebody in last minute to try to rally the troops and garner the votes, he's going to say all the right things. He's going to be in all the right places. He's well connected in the media, so he's going to be on CNN, NBC, ABC, all those other places every single night. So and it just depends on how well the media can spin it. It's being proven, in my opinion, that the media is having a tougher and tougher job spinning lies to the American public. So being able to spin Gavin Newsom to the public on a short period of time, given how crazy he was during COVID. Like, if COVID never have happened, he might be able to squeak in there now. But since COVID, I mean, he had the worst lockdown policies. They arrested a guy in California for kayaking in the ocean. So he's got no legs to stand on about not being an authoritarian or uniting any of like the Union Democrats or anybody who, any of the classic Democrats who haven't converted to Republicanism at this point. He's not winning any of those voters.
Yeah, it is truly fascinating. And speaking of just media, I haven't got to finish it yet. I'll finish it on my way to work tomorrow. Matt Taibbi was just on with Tucker Carlson. And and again, I've still got like 35, 40 minutes to go because it's like 2 hours and 12 minutes or something. What a fascinating interview with somebody who's, an actual journalist who keeps his biases out of his story, when he's writing articles or whatever, he keeps his political bias out. He goes with the information, which infuriates his bosses at times, or did. They didn't like what he had to say. You know, he was talking about during the whole Trump-Russia collusion stuff that at some point he's looking at it and going, there's two options here. Either Russia perpetrated the perfect, got the perfect Manchurian candidate, literally manipulated someone in and got him into the White House, or this is all bunk. And so that's how he looked at it. There was no third option. Either this is the greatest thing ever done by, Russia in another country as far as elections go, or it's total BS. And, well, yeah, of course, it was BS. But he was unafraid to look at the evidence and then publish works on what he found without leaving because he did not like Trump at all. Despised the guy. I think he wrote a book called Stupid Clown President or something like that. So he had no love for Trump, but he didn't allow that to influence his thinking. And the media that we have today, well, I should say the mainstream media that we have today, 99% of them don't have that ability to hold back the bias. And that's, as a human being, that is hard. It is part of human nature to inject your own bias, especially when you're doing research, because there's things you want to believe, and then when you find contradictory evidence, you have to really fight and go, okay, well, clearly I was wrong. A lot of people can't do that. But the media, yeah, there's the homeless encampments and anything with Newsom, Biden, their bias and their hatred of the other candidate and their own political biases just skew information so badly that, again, you have to be really dumbed down to take everything they say as the gospel and then regurgitate it to your friends and in your own echo chambers. It just shows how unintelligent some people are.
Oh, yeah. No, we're going to cover a lot of different instances where the media have been particularly deceitful, wrong, unintelligent. We've got a lot of that coming up. But Matt Taibbi was one of the journalists. Him and Michael Schellenberger were two of the journalists picked to release the Twitter files for exactly the reasons like you're mentioning. Several lawsuits have determined that shows like Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow, they're not news. They're not technically considered news. If they were, they could be like their lawsuits again for slander and all that would have they would have been able to be sued by people if they considered themselves news outlets, but they don't. They consider themselves entertainment, and so they don't have to hold themselves to any journalistic standards on TV, especially. But when you've got, I mean, it's basically open knowledge at this point that the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, all of them, they're just a conglomerate of Democrats. And the one of NPR's higher ups, one of the chief editors there, either the chief editor or a former chief editor, had said that NPR had totally lost its way, that every single one of its journalists, every single one of its high-ranking journalists voted Democrat. So they clearly don't have two different opinions in that newsroom in particular, or in any of them, the ones that I just mentioned. And so it is extremely important to have people like Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger, and I mean, I could go on for days, Aaron Matei, Max Blumenthal, Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. They're all excellent journalists that actually still do reporting in journalism. They'll take on both sides. They fight corruption on both sides. And I think those people are becoming more and more popular at a rapid rate, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, Taibbi was even talking about, he's went to oh my God, where a lot of people publish works, Substack. And he was like, I thought that was niche. You can't make any money. He's like, man, was I wrong? Because what he found is people in alternative media are making pretty good income by releasing their works on there, people paying for their articles and their writings and everything. And he was really shocked at how much money you can make. And, he didn't do it for the money. It's just that he didn't have a choice because most of the, newspapers, radio stations, TV stations don't want somebody like, they don't want unbiased reporting. They want a bias, whether it's towards the left or the right. So this is what he went with. But because of his Twitter files work, because of the Russia collusion stuff, and some of his other work, I think he did a lot of stuff on Blackwater, other things. I mean, his work in Rolling Stone set a path for him to just do Substacks and be fine. And still a lot of people want to interview him and pick his brain. And again, it's nice because he mentions he's more left-leaning, but he's able to leave that out when it comes to research and doing what a journalist is actually supposed to do, which is, here's the facts that I found. Now you make up your own mind. I hate to, sometimes, Brandon, I sound so pessimistic, but I sometimes wonder if a lot of people that just turn on the evening news or the morning news and watch, if they can even make up their own minds anyway, or if they're so happy and being blissfully ignorant that they have to depend on somebody else to form an opinion for them. You know what I'm saying?
I will say it's the younger generation has an easier time discerning or ignoring authoritative statuses like that. So like the younger generation, like we're the ones who are more on YouTube, reading the Substacks of our favorite journalists. It's the older generation that had it ingrained for them in them for a long time to trust the news. For a long time, if it was on the news, not that you believed it per se, but first of all, the news was giving you a slightly less biased version, but then always it was trust. Like if you saw it on TV, you could trust it. And the ironic part to me is it's from the generation. In my opinion, that generation, like the older Democrats still watch MSNBC and the older Republicans still watch Fox News. And it's ironic to me that older generation that falls for the narratives that are all pushed by the CIA through all these news sources that have been doing it for 20 plus years now, they're the ones who told us not to trust what we see on the internet. They're like, you can't believe everything you see on the internet. I heard that so many times growing up. Oh, you can't believe that just because you read it on the internet. Where'd you hear that? The internet. But it turns out that we're actually getting truth on the internet, and we're getting truth from unbiased sources, and they're the ones stuck just eating up CIA establishment narratives. So,
absolutely. I have to say, I see another new name in the live chat here, Fife and Drum. So, Fife and Drum, you're still on. Welcome to the live stream. Good to see you in the chat. I haven't seen that name before. All right. Well, I guess what we can do, I don't think we'll play all of them, but I want to play a couple of the gaffes that Biden had. I'm just going to play some random ones, and we'll talk about them. But
I would say the most important one is number one. It's debate number one. That's the clip title, because that's the biggest gaffe. He really didn't stumble or freeze up. Yeah, he stumbled a lot, but he didn't freeze up too many times. This was the one where the moment everyone was waiting for, with bated breath, is Biden going to make it? This is the one that proved that he was not.
Okay, let me kick this bad boy on here.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So yeah, right there. I mean, again, that's just really, really hard to listen to, because I don't approve of his policies. I don't like the things that he's done, but he's an elderly man, and I feel sorry for him that he's up there on that stage and he's struggling to say what he wants to say. I feel bad I really do. I feel kind of bad for the guy. But if he's going to be steadfast and say, I'm not stepping down, I want another 4 years, even though he may not know exactly what he's doing, and his family and the DNC and everybody else is going to weekend at Bernie's him for attempt that for another 4 years. It's kind of like, okay, well, maybe you brought a little bit of this on yourself because in your arrogance, you wanted to be the president, and by hook or by crook, they got it done. But I still, having elderly, like, relatives and stuff, if you see somebody struggling like that, I mean, just an elderly person, you feel bad. Because on the inside, they feel terrible because they can't relate to you how they want. And then he's on the one of the biggest stages, or the biggest stage. And here he is. He can't form I don't know. It's tough for me to watch because I feel like it's part arrogance that got him there and part elder abuse at the same time.
So there was a couple of times last night where Donald Trump called him out a little bit for stuttering and not, getting out coherent thoughts. But for the most part, I will say was relatively respectful compared to the last debates, like the last cycle of debates they had. I think Trump thought that Trump thought in 2020 that Biden was where he is now. So he was attacking him, going on full attack, thinking Biden was going to crumble under the pressure, and he didn't. So it just made him look arrogant last time. This time, he took the opposite approach. He was like, I'm going to be nice and let this guy just dig his own grave, which of course he did, but he didn't go after him when he did it, which would have been way more appropriate this time because there's way more speculation this time around that Biden can't get the job done, of course, than there was last time. Last time he was campaigning not being the president, so he could just hide, literally could just hide for weeks. And so no one could get a solid gauge on where he was at. So then when he came out for the debates and Trump went at him hard and he turned out to be relatively competent, comparatively speaking, where we're at now, it made Trump look really bad. But last night, I think Trump did himself a lot of favors with earning over that niche of the independent voters that just think Trump's too rough around the edges. I think he may have done himself a lot of favors there. I didn't think that debate was going to move the needle much, but after Biden kind of fell off on that clip you kind of saw there, I could see about 1% to 2% of the population having shifted just watching that.
Yeah, I again, from the clips that I saw, I know there was one clip where he goes, I don't understand what he just said, and I don't think he understands what he just said either. So it was a jab, but it wasn't, over the top and his normal rude-like comments and behavior. But, and it's the thing, in that situation, as awful as it may be, if it doesn't matter what candidate it is, Trump, somebody else, you kind of have to call it out a little bit. Like, guys, look at what we're doing here. Are we sure we can have 4 more years of this? And not go overly stupid about it, but because if you don't want to go too far because then the media is going to turn on you and, oh, what an evil person he is, making fun of an old man. But if you don't, then you don't draw any attention to it. You're not doing yourselves any favor either because you're being too soft. And unfortunately, and especially if you're trying to get into the White House, being soft isn't going to score you any points with the public. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. I hate all the mudslinging and the stupidity because while they're doing that, they're not focusing on what's really important. And if they are talking about important issues, they're both sides are spouting unconstitutional, immoral ways of going about fixing the problem or just making empty promises. So, yeah, I don't know. That was just, God. Again, I feel really bad for President Biden being, again, he's part of the blame falls on him, but I'm thinking if I'm his wife and you have to hide him in a basement for the first time around when he won in 2020, that clearly tells you that he wasn't really fit and you as his supposed most loving, spouse, I would think most spouses would go, "Hey, babe, I get it. I understand. You want to be president, but you gotta retire from politics and take it easy. You're not in the best of health." And not Dr. Jill. Dr. Jill's like, "Yeah, let's do this. I can get more. I can get more. I can get me some power too." So there's just a whole heck of a lot of blame to go around in this thing. I don't know. It just absolutely drives me nuts, and it's horrifying to watch and listen to.
I appreciate you using Dr. Jill Biden. Acknowledging her very esteemed title.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So very, very courteous of you, John. Good on you.
I wanted that sarcasm in there because I'm thinking if you're such a great doctor, then you wouldn't put your husband and allow him to put himself what he's partially been put through and what he's put himself through. If you're such an esteemed doctor, I don't think you'd do that to a loved one. So I wanted to add the doctor part in to add a little emphasis there.
I think she's just has like a doctorate in something totally not medical related, but
It is.
either way, it is. Yeah, it's totally funny to call her Dr. Biden whenever she's elderly abuse there.
Well, just real quick, because she loves to tout it as if she's so much more intelligent than most people around her. So yeah, then I'm going to put a little dig there and go, well, if you're so intelligent, what are you doing with your husband here, sister? What's going on here? So yeah, I can turn that around and say, well, if you're so smart, what are we doing here?
She probably looks at herself like Nancy Reagan at the end of his term in the mirror. She's like, I'm doing this for the country and for the people. And that's probably honestly how she views herself, is that like the fate of democracy is in her hands because she's holding up Joe Biden and he's the only one left. So she's probably got some super narcissistic ego about the whole thing. Probably this very like, woe is me by doing this whole, like all the pressure's on me kind of a situation, when in reality, she could just let him step aside. She could go and retire off with him to the sunset. They've got enough going on with Hunter Biden. It's not like he could just pardon Hunter Biden tomorrow, leave office, and be done with it. But one thing I do want to mention, though, is what you were just talking about a second ago whenever Biden couldn't finish a sentence and Trump called him out for it. That's debate clip number 2 if you want to just play it real quick.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me see. Here we go. All right.
People coming across the border illegally, it's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
He's not wrong.
Right. And like I said, that's a very mild way of putting it, because like before that was actually after he had that previous meltdown where I beat Medicaid. That's what he ended that sentence with, was not the last one, not the clip you just played, but that first one. He was like, look, we beat Medicaid. And then Trump, just off the cuff, perfectly comes in with, yeah, you beat it to death, and then goes on about how the immigrants are sucking all the money out of Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. So honestly, it was like a perfect takedown to like this. There's no way anyone could have saw Biden saying, I beat Medicaid, and Trump just immediately being like, yeah, you beat it to death. Crazy. Like I said, Trump did himself a lot of favors last night. Excellent comeback. Wasn't too rough on Biden, but definitely, like you said, he let him know at moments, like, I don't know what he just said. I don't think he knows what he just said. Because it was like at the end of that sentence, he was just saying words that it didn't form a coherent sentence. He just said words that related to the border. It was like a buzzwords, just Border Patrol, asylum agents, and just trying to get words out that sounded like he was saying something, but he was saying absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's really, again, very hard to listen to. Well, we've got other stuff here that we can definitely go into. I mean, let me pull up this. Where'd it go? Let me pull up this other piece of. Okay, why are you being such a butthead to me right now? Okay, let me see if I can pull up the one clip or the one. Yeah, this post-debate poll, Trump edges ahead, Biden's support wavers. Following a presidential debate, a post-debate poll by Survey USA shows Donald Trump leading Joe Biden by 45 to 43%, with 6% undecided and 7% favoring the other candidates. The poll, conducted among 2,315 likely voters, also revealed that 58% of Democrats believe Biden. This is the hardest part to say, because I can't believe that 58% of Democrats believe Biden is up to the job of being president for the next 4 years, while 22% disagree.
That means that that means 42% of Democrats are either unsure or against him running for another term, thinking that he's even mentally capable of making it that far. That's why I wanted to include that slide in there, is because it just highlights how poorly. I mean, usually when you have like a super bad approval rating or favorability rating, the diehards of your party are with you. Like when Bush had his bad approval ratings, and Trump and Obama, all of them, when they all had bad approval ratings, they had the heart of their party was still behind him. The heart of the Democrat Party is not behind Joe Biden anymore. That was why I thought that poll was interesting, is that he's 2 points away from Trump, but half of his own party doesn't think he's even capable of making it through a second term. But bananas to me, sir. Bananas.
It is interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the DNC handles this, because I think if it was anybody else but Trump, they would just play it off.
What do you mean by play it off?
They would just be like, well, you just had a bad night, and they would just kind of gloss over it. But with Trump being the other candidate, it puts him into full panic mode. I think if it was somebody who wasn't, I'm saying, that isn't as polarizing as Trump, I think it wouldn't be such a big deal. Like, oh, we'll get through this. With it being Trump, and again, I'm not a Trump fan, I'm just saying, the Trump derangement syndrome that comes from the left, they're sitting there looking at this like, oh my God, he could win again. So it gets them really panicked. And it just seems like there's a play at hand here, that something's going on in the background. Again, for CNN and all these others, like, oh God, he was horrible during the debate. He did awful. He got his butt kicked. And then CNN's posting everything that he said wrong during the debate. They never do that. They don't ever do that. And they're doing it. It's like, okay, is there a plan in action here that we're all unaware of? Because this is not the behavior that we're used to from especially CNN and MSNBC, for them to go against their beloved dictator from as Tom March would call it, the Smurf cult. So it just seems like there's something else at play here. And again, I'm no political scientist. I'm just some silly podcaster. But when you're looking at all this and you're seeing a different type of behavior, just like, what are they getting at? Because most Democrats seem very dumb, but they're not dumb people, really. They have a great plan. It's been working for a long time. So something tells me there's something else, maybe a plan B in the background, that if they feel like everything's just collapsing, they'll be like, all right, it doesn't matter. We have to switch this up, because this is, anybody, it's the anybody but Trump, mindset. Oh my God, we just can't let him win. We'll put somebody in a Mickey Mouse costume and have him talk, and just because he's a Democrat, everybody loves Mickey Mouse. It just, that's the way they act. Okay, well, Disney's in a really blue area. We'll just put Goofy and Mickey Mouse on as president and vice presidential candidate, and I bet we get 40% of the vote. But if we allow kids under the age of 18 to vote, we'll get way higher percentage totals. I just, after seeing what we've seen just in the last 8 years, nothing that they pull anymore would shock me. What the DNC did to Bernie Sanders in 2016 and pulled the rug out from underneath him and admitted to it. Nothing, and then Bernie, I think the best part of that was Bernie Sanders telling his supporters to vote for Hillary Clinton and the amount of boos that he got after that. That tells you everything you need to know. Both parties will just completely demolish the front runner for somebody else who they feel has better name recognition or will give them what they want as far as awful policies. And I mean, I'm sorry, you thinking that Hillary Clinton is the best you can do? That every one of those people has to be worshiping Satan in their basement. If you think Hillary Clinton's like the pinnacle, this is the best Hillary Clinton, she'll win. And it's like that woman that literally every time she speaks or cackles, you're waiting for the horns to pop out from underneath her skin. That's the woman you're going with. Okay, cool.
I think so. After Bill Clinton became president, I think that that both of them, Bill and Hillary, had a ton of influence inside of the Democrat Party, the same way Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, whenever he was in the House, they all had like a lot of the Republican donations funnel through them, either through the RNC, DNC, Win Red, Act Blue, or however. That money funnels down from the top in these political systems. Like the big donors give a ton of money to like the super PAC of Nancy Pelosi or Hillary Clinton or like all of her charity or whatever. And so I think when in 2016, because Obama was just an anomaly. Obama was just the most well-spoken, well-crafted politician you could possibly design in a lab. But then in 2016, Hillary Clinton just used all of her influence to make it where no one else was going to challenge her. I don't know if this is true. I remember hearing about it back in the day, but I'm pretty sure people inside of Hillary's camp were encouraging Bernie Sanders to run because they figured if it was Bernie versus Hillary, everyone would be like, oh, socialism, and Hillary Clinton would have it in a landslide. So first of all, they were wrong that time because Bernie Sanders and the socialist movement and the underground movement the grassroots movement that he built really backfired on her. And so I think I think he was always going to toe establishment line. I think the only time maybe that would have been different was in 2020, but I don't even think so then. I think even in 2020 that Bernie Sanders' whole play was to drop out and support the Democrat nominee at some point. And then also Hillary Clinton handpicked Donald Trump too. I think that they were the reason Donald Trump, like Hillary Clinton's camp wanted Donald Trump propped up because she thought she could beat him the easiest, and that turned out to backfire on her. So I think that I don't even obviously the people don't want Hillary Clinton, but
yeah, I don't know. Well, let's get into this because I said it right from the get-go. We got from presidential debate to Hawaii wildfire. Let me pull up this. Actually, let me do this first. Get this pulled up, and it's the headline from the L.A. Times. Hawaii. Folks, you want to talk about journalism with integrity? Well, I can't say that. I can't point this at the journalists because they're reporting what Hawaii, the probably governor and all the other schmucko, the clowns that are in government offices in Hawaii, this is what they said. But this is the L.A. Times headline. And Brandon, I'll let you do all the talking on this, but
so really quick, my main point to this is that it's about the climate narratives. So you sent me an article earlier in the week about accidental cooling, that when you burn certain carbon fuels, that it releases sulfur into the atmosphere, which is actually a sun blocker. It reflects the radiation, so it actually was helping cool down the planet. And then now in that article, they talked about how the cooling process is going to end because we're phasing out those carbon emissions. Like we're phasing out carbon emissions, which is phasing out these sulfurs that are blocking the sunlight. And it's supposed to, we're phasing out of this accidental cooling period, and it's going to be super, super dramatic But then, and they're like, there's like one guy who in that article who is like, he works for Swipe, the company, like the credit card online processing. I'm not exactly sure how to word it. It's the payment processor, Swipe. He works for them, and he's also a climate scientist. And he said that we don't know what this is, a rapid period of unknown we're entering. We don't know if this is going to raise the global temperature by 1 degree. And then buried in the 15th paragraph of that article, it says that most scientific experts on the matter say that it's only going to raise the global temperature by 5/100ths to 1/10 of a degree. So from 0.05 to 0.1 degree is where most experts think that this is going to get raised. But in the fourth or fifth paragraph of this article, they're like, it could raise the global temperature by 1 whole degree. And so I wanted to use the whole point of the wildfires thing is to highlight how bad journalism has been on the climate, and how they'll report the Gavin Newsom standing in the middle of this burned wildfire being like the global warming is terrorizing these wildfires. But then it come to find out that if you actually just took natural foresting care of the woods, like if you burned dead stuff in the woods through controlled burns, that you'd prevent way more wildfires than are being caused by global warming. And that the Lahaina wildfire, for a long time, that they said that was based on global warming, that global warming is what caused the fire. But it comes to find out that Hawaii Electric, the electric company that was running Maui, they weren't clearing the brush around their wires. So they had a line fall down, wires hit this overgrown grass, and it caused the fire. And then the fire department apparently came out at one point and put out a blaze, but that same blaze reignited later, and that's what caught the whole town on fire. That's what caused that disaster in Hawaii. And so it's just funny how people will be like, oh, every wildfire is caused by climate change. And the media will report every wildfire is caused by climate change. And it turns out that actually, if you just deforest and did controlled burns, that you wouldn't have that problem. Michael Schellenberger, one of the guys we were talking about earlier, one of those independent journalists who's big on Substack, he had a whole thread on Twitter. I recommend anybody go look it up. He dropped it a couple days ago. And it was it's just loaded full of all of these different articles where like CNN's got one about coral reefs too, where they're like the coral reefs are going away. And then they posted from CNN another article like a couple years later talking about how the coral reefs are bigger than they've ever been. And he's got a ton of examples like that. I'm trying to think of the other ones I have on there. Vanishing islands is one. They said that global warming was going to cause the polar ice caps to melt, and it was the rising sea levels from that were going to wash away these islands. And then the New York Times had to come out with an article. Well, they didn't have to, but they came out with an article earlier this week talking about how none of the islands that they said were going to vanish are vanishing, and that 85% of them are actually bigger.
Yeah, I think it was the Atoll Islands, wasn't it?
It was the Maldives and the atolls, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're going to give an example of government, if you want another example of the hypocrisy of government, this LA Times article is titled, Hawaii Power Utility says its wire sparked first fire on Maui, but faults county firefighters. So another example of government deflecting the blame onto just a different branch you got, because generally most fire departments are somewhat of a branch of government. Sometimes they're volunteer fire departments, and other times they're, actual city or whatever fire departments. But yeah, we didn't clean up. As one guy said during Trump's presidency, just sweep the floor. Basically pick up all the dead stuff off the ground. Maybe you wouldn't have this problem. Here we go, someone not cleaning their floor up. And their utilities start the fire, but then they want to blame the county fire department for the whole place burning to the ground, and I just find that absolutely so. It says the first part of the first paragraph. Hawaii's electric utility acknowledged its power line started a wildfire on Maui, but faulted county firefighters for declaring the blaze contained and leaving the scene, only to have a second wildfire break out nearby. Mind you, it wasn't on the site. It was nearby and become the deadliest in the U.S. in more than a century. So, yeah, not only was it not on the direct spot, it was nearby. But they still want to blame. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Brandon, if you're these firefighters and you see this headline, I mean, don't you want to go up to whatever government building and go, hey, how about next time we have a wildfire because your environmental policies are causing some of this, we'll give you the buckets and the hose and you go put it out. And then you can come back and tell us it's all clear. And then when the blaze starts again, then we'll go right to the newspapers and blame it on you. But I would have a hard time going to bat for these people or sticking up for them or even wanting to fight fires again if they're going to lay the blame at my feet for something that they caused in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole shout out to Craig Jardula. He goes by Yo Pasta on social medias and YouTube, and or not on YouTube, on Rumble. He's got a show called Pasta to Go. But whenever the Lahaina fire first started, he was an advocate. He went down there several times, and he's made documentaries and videos about the cover-ups that they've done. There's a lot of corruption going on there. One of the tell hints in the beginning that made me suspicious was when The Rock and Oprah Winfrey were together, and they were talking about they're trying to like raise money and donations for the wildfires that happened. And they're both really, really rich. Like, why would a billionaire be asking the people for a very small amount of money for relief? And then so when you start look into it, is that there's a lot of land being sold there that not everyone's necessarily getting their homes back. There's a lot of investigative stuff to look into as far as the Lahaina wildfires go.
Yeah, it's just dripping with government hypocrisy. I mean, I think, and now, mind you, it'd be the most awful tasting beverage that you could ever put in your mouth. But I think if we could start our own coffee company, it would just be called Government Hypocrisy Coffee. Who needs to grind the beans? Who needs to go out and grow fields of coffee beans when you can just turn government hypocrisy into coffee? Again, there'll be people that drink it, gulp it down like, oh, this stuff's not half bad. The rest of us be like, I'm not touching that. That'd be like going out in the front yard and finding dog turds and liquefying it and just taking a straight up drink out of it. But boy, you'd have a never ending supply of coffee if you just had Government Hypocrisy Coffee Company. I mean, I guess you could, and the thing is, you probably wouldn't have to. Think about it this way. If you had a company called Government Hypocrisy Coffee, and then you bagged this stuff up and you sold it on store shelves, it wouldn't even be coffee beans. Or if it was, it would be coffee grounds that were already used, and they'd dry them out, clean them up, and resell them to you at a higher cost. So it's going to be weak, god-awful tasting, high-priced government hypocrisy coffee brand. Yeah. And that would encompass what government is. Like, and it would... And the slogan could be "Taste like government," and you would taste like, this is disgusting. I think we could make some real money at this if we really wanted to give it a shot. In order to cut costs, we went around and took everybody's used coffee grounds and dried them up and resold them in these nice Mylar bags. With it's like, can you imagine pitching that to an ad company? Like, so what message are you trying to get out of your brand? What's the message here? Like, we're just going to say taste like government. They're like, so it's really good? Like, no, it's really bad. It's really, really bad.
And they're going to ask us if we drink it. They're like, you guys drink your government coffee? We're like, no, we drink Folgers. What are you, stupid?
Yeah, I get the Dunkin' Donuts brand. This is for the lobies. These are for the
I just
peasants.
sell this. I don't drink this. Are you crazy?
Stuff tastes like athlete speed. I don't want nothing to do with this. Let's see.
We definitely need to talk about Assange today. I think that is big news. I almost wanted to lead with that, but the debates were last night. I had to start with that. But Assange is free. He is back home in Australia. This is a win for everybody.
Okay, real quick, Brandon. This is really odd of me to request this of you. Can you cover me for about 5 minutes? I drank way too much water. I got to hit the restroom. So you want to take over till I get back? You feel free to give your thoughts on Assange and what. I mean, I know where you're going. I can jump back into the conversation, but I'm gonna go take a restroom break, and you take over, and I'll be back in a moment.
Absolutely. So we've got an article this is from the BBC, Jonathan Head. The title of the article is Julian Assange Pleads Guilty in Court on U.S. Pacific Island. Assange entered the formal plea deal to a single charge in the Northern Mariana Islands, an American territory in the Pacific, 2 days after leaving a British prison. At the hearing, Assange admitted to a felony charge of conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defense information. He said, quote, working as a journalist, I encouraged my source to provide information that was said to be classified in order to publish that information, Assange told the court. But he emphasized that he believed he would be protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which covers freedom of the press. During the hearing, prosecutors said the WikiLeaks founder actively encouraged leaks of classified information. They said that Assange told leakers that, quote, Assange told the leakers that, quote, top secret means nothing. So basically he had to go and plead guilty to lawfully publishing information that he received. Journalists do this all the time. They get classified documents and release them all the time. I'm pretty sure the Washington Post released the Afghan papers, which was full of classified information. I'm pretty sure it's been done hundreds of times where they receive and release classified information. It's what journalism is supposed to do. The government just went after him this particular time because he was releasing things that made them look bad. He was releasing all sorts of damaging information on all of the different war crimes that are higher ups in the government and that are the deep state's been committing. So it's amazing that he's out. It's a really good thing that he finally got released, that he's back in Australia with his wife. And want to just, everyone who kept up the pressure should feel rewarded by this as well. If you were, every time that you made your opinions known that Assange did not belong in prison for doing some of the best journalism that's ever been done, then good on you. I was at the Libertarian National Convention about a month ago, and RFK Jr. was on the stage speaking, and to his credit, he said that Assange deserved a statue out front of Washington, D.C., instead of being in jail where he was at the time. So I actually think that, not to credit the Libertarian Party per se, but all of the liberty-minded people who've been pushing this for years, I think it's you all deserve a little credit too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm jumping in on a conversation that you've been having with the audience for the last couple minutes, Brandon, but I think the only thing that sucks about this whole thing is that he had to plead guilty to something, and then he's had to agree not to release any more information. And I know the guys on Good Morning Liberty were saying that it would be funny if him and his family went to a country with no extradition treaties and would just go ahead and just drop all the other info that he gathered onto the internet and said, ta-da, enjoy, everybody. Look at what else your government's done. I was like, yeah, that would be a pretty boss move if he would do something to that effect. But I know he's not going to. He's he's happy to have his freedom that he should have never lost to begin with. So it is awesome to see him out. Hopefully we see Snowden and Ross Ulbricht and some of the others also get the same treatment here very soon. It is a liberty win. Again, him having to plead to one felony of something distributing classified documents or whatever he had to plead to was complete BS. But it is good to see that he got to go home to Australia and finally be with his family. It's just, besides, like people like Taibbi and some of the others, that's some of the best journalists. He wasn't even really a journalist. And he did some of the best journalism that we've seen. I mean, that video that he put out of those, was it 10 or 11 journalists getting mowed down by that helicopter and machine gun fire? That's one of the big ones, and some of the war crimes and stuff that he brought attention to. If it hadn't been for him, we probably still wouldn't know that it happened. That's just a win. No matter what idiots like Mike Pence say on Twitter, because I saw that. I got to pull that tweet up because that was just, and I know other people have brought it up too, but this post on Twitter just, I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. Let me find. I bookmarked it just to.
I was a point I want to make about kind of leading into what you're saying here about Mike Pence is that all of the people who were in charge, responsible, not necessarily all of the people, but all of the forces that were responsible for jailing Assange, for doing journalism, they're all still in, all of those same forces are all still in play. It might not be the exact same people in charge of the exact same departments, but that same energy, the same style of deep state, like Julian Assange was the enemy, those people are still there. Joe Biden may have signed a plea deal with Assange because now politically it looks good, but all of the forces that jail good journalism that would do this again in a heartbeat, they're all still in power. And so let's not forget that all of the forces that caused Julian Assange to lose his freedoms, they're still unchecked.
Absolutely. And this post from Mike Pence, this just goes right along here with what Brandon was saying. It says, Julian Assange endangered the lives of our troops in a time of war and should have been prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The Biden administration's plea deal with Assange is a miscarriage of justice and dishonors the service and sacrifice of the men and women of our armed forces and their families. There should be no plea deals to avoid prison for anyone that endangers the security of our military or the national security of the United States ever. That's Mike Pence's Twitter post from, it was the day that Assange, I saw it yesterday, and I was like, wow, dude, bro. If that doesn't tell you, folks, what your government thinks of anyone who would tell the truth. This right here, this post on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I'm going old man here, so I'm calling it Twitter. Good luck trying to get me to call it X all the time. But posts like this on Twitter, that shows you what their priority is. It is not about saving democracy. It is not about preserving democracy or spreading freedom around the world. It is to consolidate power, to get more money, and to go meddling in the affairs of people everywhere around the world, and then to sit there and just kind of shrug it off like, all a day's work. Oh, what we destabilize the region and cause refugees to flee everywhere into other countries, and got a bunch more. We're creating terrorists because people are mad that we came into their nation and started trying to take over, and now we get to call them terrorists and chase them in all four directions and blow them up too. Oh well, that's just how freedom works. That's the mindset of these maniacal people. So yeah, when and my response to that was, that's real rich coming from a guy who would sacrifice our children at the altar of war. That was my response to his tweet, because I just quote tweeted the post, because he has no issues with sending our young men and women into another country to get them blown up or shot at or mistreated. No problem. He has no issue with that, because at the end of the day, he's just a war hawk. He's just a neocon. He's going to kiss the feet of the Defense Department and the CIA, and he's going to kiss the feet and the rings of all these people in order to keep his position. And I just wonder what kind of medication these people take to be able to sleep at night when they do these things repeatedly and then act like it's just no sweat. Oh, man, that was no problem at all sending your kids over to die in some unnecessary war. Anything for you, fine, free folks, We're just spreading freedom dust. It's cool. So I don't know what kind of sleeping pills these people have to be on to be able to lay their head on a pillow at night and fall asleep. But it must be a wonder drug, because I know I couldn't do that.
Well, everyone should remember that Mike Pence is Savior Donald Trump's first vice presidential nominee pick.
Yep.
And stuck with him for 4 years. So the guy who's going to drain the swamp that was his vice president for 4 years, was the guy who thinks Assange is still a war criminal, still believes that. The amazing part too is there's an excellent exchange. We don't have to play it if you don't want to, but it's the second Assange clip I sent over. And it's this interaction with Jake Sullivan, who's somewhere, I want to say I don't know if he's just a national security advisor or if he's got a higher title than that, but he was doing a press conference about Assange's release. So, and this reporter was asking Jake Sullivan if he could list one person or one example of any person who was actually harmed by Assange's released documents. Because that was the claim, is that he put a bunch of people in danger when he released all of these documents, that there were military secrets that were endangering the lives of thousands of people. And this reporter was like, so can you name one? Like, can you name one? And he's like, oh, it was a long time ago, and the Department of Defense worked very, very fast. And he's like, yeah, but can you name one person that the Department of Defense moved fast for? And he was like, the Department of Defense moved very fast. It's like if you, one thing Jake Sullivan says in there that really cracks me up, he says, it's like if you drive drunk. Just because you didn't hurt somebody doesn't mean you didn't do anything wrong. And the reporter, in fairness, was having none of that. He was like, I don't see how that's the same at all, but okay. And then later, a different reporter was asking him, because the judge in the court case had said, the reason we're handing down such a light sentence, which was just for time served, basically, was because the reason they were handing down time served was because the judge couldn't cite a single person that had actually been harmed by Assange's releases. And so that reporter, again, asked Jake Sullivan about it, and Jake Sullivan was like, the Department of Defense moved really fast to keep people out of harm's way. And they're like, the judge had said in court that there was no evidence that anyone was actually put in harm's way.
Yeah, I don't see that clip in the folder, so I don't know where it's at. Or I would play it, but I don't see it. So I don't know. We've been having problems with that anyway. I don't think your mic's on, bro.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I basically highlighted all that I needed. The main point of the clip anyway, which was that they kept multiple reporters were pressing Jake Sullivan about if he could just list any examples of anyone harmed by Assange's releases, and he couldn't do it. And the judge cited that in his decision that there was no harm done by Assange. So that's why he got a lenient sentence for journalism.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it just goes to show you how the lengths these people will go to cover up their crimes, and it doesn't faze them a bit to throw somebody in jail for 5 years for covering up their war crimes. Again, when we were in Panama, and the whole Iran-Contra thing, the supposed freedom fighters, the atrocities they committed during Reagan's time in office were horrible. And Vice President Bush goes down there, and they're trying to tell him, and he just smiles and like, yeah, whatever, and just moves right along. I'm trying to remember that there was a documentary I watched, and this guy was talking about, he's like, Bush walked right up to this. He was somebody in the military, and he's like, hey, X, Y, and Z, and Bush is just like not, smiling and nodding and shaking his hand and just walked past him like he never said a word. And, there's so many different examples of these things. And in this type of behavior from, again, the Defense Department and all this, it's just like, good Lord, what is going on right now with the people who, Assange, Snowden puts this in, people like Assange and Snowden put this information out. And the government, of course, rushes out to get in front of it and say, oh, these people are traitors. They're putting lives at risk, and they're putting our national security at risk. And they get it right out in front of it, and they use the word traitor or use the word espionage or whatever. And there's a decent chunk of the population that it doesn't matter how good and solid and factual the information is. If the government tells them that these are very, very bad people and that they risk the lives of soldiers, or like in Snowden's case, blows the NSA, blows the doors off the NSA, saying, well, we don't really do all these things. And then come to find out, yes, they're doing exactly all those things. And people in the government and people in normal everyday life are like, off with his head. I mean, really, it's just like, oh, just take him out. In the case of Snowden, point blank, the guy worked on these programs. It's telling you your government is spying on you. And they just go, and some people are like, huh. It's like they shove their fingers in their ear and go, la, 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 I can't hear you. Like, it begs the question, what do these people, what is the gain? When someone comes out and speaks out about their government, especially in times like these that we're living in now, knowing that the people at the very top, like Pompeo, wanted Assange, wanted to take him out. He wanted to take Assange out. There's nothing good to gain. There's no big personal gains by getting out in front of the media and just dumping loads of information and go, look what the government's doing. There's nothing to gain for these people. They're risking everything. And for the government and people, just everyday normal citizens, just saying, what a kook. That's such a disservice to the bravery that some of these people have shown by trying to warn the American people about what their own government is capable of doing.
Yeah, so it's funny now how whistleblowers treated so much differently now that like whistleblower now is considered, so I guess whistleblower was kind of considered a negative term when Edward Snowden did it. Like it was, because nowadays, like I remember I think his name was Colonel Michael Vindman. He was the one he was testifying against Trump at the impeachment trial. but he was considered a whistleblower because he like anonymously was releasing like this information. And when he does it, he's considered a hero. But when Edward Snowden does it, and court after court has found that Edward Snowden's the spy program that the NSA was doing, court after court had ruled it was unconstitutional. So he actually blew the whistle on one of the most unconstitutional spying efforts in our government's history. And instead of celebrating him, he is hiding. He is, I'm pretty sure he's in Russia, right? Hiding at an embassy somewhere, or just is free in Russia. I'm not sure.
Snowden is free in Russia, but he's not. I mean, he's not. It's not good.
No, I'm sure this. I'm sure he's afraid the CIA is still looking for him. So I'm sure he's still tucked and hiding. I mean, I wouldn't be out in public that much either. The CIA operates all over the world. So you just because you move to Russia where like the police can't come arrest you does not mean that you're safe from the American deep state.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You know, with Assange, even though he pled guilty to one felony and he got to go home, if I'm that guy, especially after the way the Australian government acted during COVID, I'd be looking over my shoulder at all times. I hear a car backfire, I'm probably hitting the ground because I'm just sitting there going, "Oh God, are they still?" Because some of these people are not going to ever let go of this. They're going to be mad at him forever, and I think if they got the chance to really screw him over again, they would, because they're super mad that somebody put out information that made the war hawks and the neocons look horrible. And so if I'm him, I'm looking over my shoulder every time I go out in public.
Well, yeah, and with Edward Snowden too, he when he with what he did, he this is why I need to write my notes down. I'll get it back in a second, but anyway, it reminds you that the work definitely, there's still work to be done as far as fighting for these guys, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's we have to, just like all these other topics that we cover, we have to keep this in the forefront of people's minds to say, hey, just because the government decided to let him out of prison doesn't mean that this guy's free and clear and that he's, you know, able to go about a normal life and not be paranoid. You know, again, after what he's been through for the last 12 years, it's going to be real hard for that guy to be very trusting and to be at ease when he's going about his daily life for quite some time. Guy's probably going to need some form of therapy just to help him kind of, you know, get his mind right. I can't imagine what his head's like, what it's like inside his head right now after everything he's been through, because, you know, 7 years in South America somewhere and 5 years in a prison in England. The guy can't be in a good place mentally. And I hope to never hear news that, you know, he unalived himself and he didn't actually do it. Somebody else helped him out. That's what I'm hoping not to hear.
The old Hillary Clinton special.
Yeah. Hope he didn't get Hillaried or Clinton. Yeah.
I remembered what I was going to say about what my opinion is a slight difference between the Snowden and Assange. So with when Assange released the documents of what they had done, it didn't necessarily mean that there was going to be change coming forward. So he exposed a bunch of war criminals' crimes, but those war criminals are still out committing the same war crimes, doing the same thing in all, like they continue to do the same thing even after Assange published. But when Snowden did what he did, when he released the current spy apparatus that the NSA, like the current spy effort that the NSA was doing, that directly was a threat to their power. So that was like a direct, like that was like Julian Assange was defaming a bunch of military generals and presidents and people involved in the decision making on foreign policy. But Edward Snowden actually took down a system that was still currently in place. And so the threat for him is going to be far greater, in my opinion, than Assange. Like, they let Assange go because he made some people look bad, but a lot of those people are phasing out anyway. What Edward Snowden did was took power away from the government, which is their favorite thing in the planet. So I think he's in for a much longer, harder battle, and I think people need to fight just as hard, if not harder, to get Edward Snowden out too.
Yeah, and even if he does, if Snowden, if they drop it or whatever, if I'm him, I'm not coming back to the U.S. I'm going to go find someplace peaceful to live, another country other than Russia, just, leaving Russia, going finding some place peaceful to live where he can hopefully remain safe. But if I'm him, I'm not stepping foot back into the United States, because you can't tell me that the people, the higher ups in the Justice Department, the NSA, don't want his head on a platter, because, again, some of the most important information that's been dropped into the lap of the public in years, as far as what the surveillance state has become, and listening in on all your conversations, seeing all your text messages and emails and everything else, kind of important information for people to know, and kind of giving people a good cause to, I don't know, not trust everything these intelligence agencies tell them. It's kind of like, oh, you guys you're telling me this? You're the same guys that lied about and lied and said that you don't listen in on my private conversations. You don't have data centers collecting information on every person that writes an email or sends a text message or makes a phone call. I'm supposed to trust what you say about this supposed bad person in another country now? Really? When you're treating me like I'm the enemy? And I'm just supposed to forget all of that and then go along with whatever you're telling me now? I mean, it really does. It takes, after Snowden released all that information, in my mind, it took away all credibility of anybody in those agencies. I have trouble trusting anything they say when they're treating me like at any moment I could be considered a homegrown terrorist. I could be considered a domestic terrorist because of the things that I say. I don't say anything that inflammatory or derogatory or anything that's like, oh, super like, wow, that's just weird he said that. I don't say any of those things. But you take all the words that I've typed out or said and you clip them together, you can make, I could be made, you or I or any of us could be made out to be some of the worst domestic terrorists ever. It's a snap of a finger. So it's hard for me to fathom how people can be so trusting. And then, you got the AI stuff is becoming huge, but then people from the NSA are being put in high places for these AI companies, which should horrify everyone, because it's like, why are you putting those people in a position of power in AI that used to work for the NSA? That's a giant red flag. What possible good could come out of that except for them to say, oh yeah, we're going to take this technology and this will help us sift through everybody's information even faster, gather information faster for our data centers, and then we can, fake things, and we want to go after somebody, we can have AI make up all this stuff, a video to make it look like they did it when they actually didn't. That's the most horrifying part. I love technology. I think AI could be used for some very good things. What bothers me is how much interest my government has in it, because as the White House press secretary would say, a bunch of cheap fakes, bunch of deep fakes and cheap fakes out there. You're not going to be able to tell, right now you can still tell when somebody's AI'd something, because the synchronization of the audio and the lip movement isn't there. But not too far in the distant future, it's going to be really hard to tell what's real and what's fake as this stuff progresses and gets, better and better all the time.
And I'm not sure the science on it, but as of right now, there are still ways to determine, even like technical ways, like through a computer, through like looking something up in the file. There's ways to tell if videos have been edited for AI, but I wouldn't be shocked if too long from now that you that you wouldn't be able to tell, even if you could like look into the file details. I'm sure pretty soon they're going to be able to come up with ways to make it look like it actually came from a camera of some kind. But I think it just ultimately goes back to your main point of that distrust in government officials has never been higher, and it's only because, like, one example of the reasons it's got to be so bad is whenever they repassed FISA, but didn't pass the part where they needed a warrant to spy on American citizens. And the most disgusting part is all these Republicans like Ann Wagner and Dan Crenshaw, they came out and said, we just put the hammer down on FISA. We gave FISA a whole set of new directives and rules they have to abide by, and they're not going to be able to do what they did last time. And then I read the details on the new restrictions that they put in on FISA, and the main ones were like, it was all intra-agency. It was not interagency checks on each other. It was like the FISA court has to have a lawyer present, or has to have like a mediator present, and the FBI has to have its own lawyer on staff to verify that this is right and wrong. And it's all self-checks. So the same entities that corrupted our system, that spied on people, that basically committed treason on Donald Trump, trying to get him basically to undermine his presidency with Russiagate, they've completely ruined all of their credibility. And with them not actually passing real reform on FISA or any real reform to any of these agencies, it just sows the level of of distrust even stronger. Like they're making it way worse whenever they like when they pretend to do something about a problem and that problem still persists. You look twice as dumb.
You know, and what's sad about that, Brandon, is after all that, the seeds that have of distrust that have been sown, we still have in the two major parties, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, as the two major choices for the presidential election. After all of this, the failed war in Afghanistan, 20 years, failure. Iraq, same way. Iraq 1 and 2, same way. And then trying to do stuff in Syria, the whole debacle in Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, all of that people are just like, what are we doing here? And they still want to fight over Trump and Biden. So again, I call into question I don't know that the intelligence is the right word. It does call into question the mentality of a lot of people in this country, that the numerous examples that have been shown in the media, whether it's mainstream or alternative, all of these things that have come out, and yet there's a large chunk of the population fighting over which one of these has-beens should be in the White House. Which two of these untrustworthy individuals, which one of these cult leaders do we want at the top of government and power, making decisions that you're just like, in reality, you should go, I don't think I want either one of those guys making decisions for me, because it seems like one of them couldn't find his butt with both hands, a flashlight, and a map, and the other one's got an ego the size of Texas. And if if he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it, whether it's dumb or not, because his ego just can't stand that maybe he's wrong. And these are the choices that the two parties put in front of people. And even though who's president shouldn't really matter. I mean, honestly, if we went by checks and balances in the three branches of government, whoever is president honestly shouldn't make that big of a difference, because from the beginning stages, the way it was set up, they have zero to no power. I mean, they have very little power, right? None of these freaking executive orders and all this stuff. Take all that out of the equation. the power that the president is actually supposed to have is pretty negligible. But now we kind of have to worry about who's at the White House because of executive orders and then the COVID thing. Holy smokes. It shouldn't matter. People shouldn't have to, well, they shouldn't be fighting over it regardless like they do, like rabid wolves. But they are, because one side has to hold their cult leader up and say, oh, put him on a pedestal and worship him. But at the end of the day, we got other things that are much more important than which derelict goes into the White House and does dumb things. I mean, we should be much more worried about Congress. And then you should be really super worried about, your state and local leadership's not really a good term to use. That's not a good word. But what your state and local schmucks are doing in their halls of government should be a much greater concern than what schmuck is in the White House.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we could go on. We've already have in past episodes. We could go on forever about the need for at least the government to be smaller, if not non-existent, in multiple different aspects. But it's not just about part of me wonders if the problem is like where the disconnect came from, because it seemed like just maybe you can help me break this down a little bit, because it seemed like for a long time people were at least everyone read the newspaper, and not that the newspaper was great because you only read the stories that the newspaper was giving you, but everyone read the paper, and everyone was out to make everyone sort of was forming opinions on that kind of a thing, whether or not you listened to friends or family or relatives or church or whoever opinions you were listening to at the time. But now everyone just catches such a flyby of everything. Like no one has, I guess there's just so much information coming at people, and there's so much happening all the time, and everyone's all busy with their own lives, is that in certain aspects, unless you're trying really, really hard, unless you dedicate a lot of your time to getting into the nitty gritty on all of these issues, there's just, it takes a high level of attention span and an actual willingness to want to learn more about this than to want to be entertained. You have to want to learn more about why the government does what it does. Why, when you go to the grocery store, why things are more expensive this week than last week. You can't just blaming on Biden or blaming it on inflation or blaming it on this or the supply chain. Actually, knowing where, the steps that led to it and why things are messed up. You have to want to know that more than you want to go do other things with your life. And you just can't, life is short. You can't blame people for not wanting to engross themselves in politics. Sometimes I'm disgusted by myself doing it, but no, I think that's part of the disconnect, is that people just are choosing to be entertained more than they are choosing to follow, to become informed on something, on things that matter to everyone. And I just want to know if you had a certain idea in your mind when that happened, because it's been going on for long after, since I've been born. It was going on before then, where people just catch the news versus finding out about things.
My take on this, and I've had this opinion for some time, is this is going to sound so sexist. I just know it, but to me, it's honestly what I believe, is that once women's libs started and women getting into the workplace, the agenda was, we'll get both parents into the workplace, we'll bring the kids in, they'll put us in charge of educating them fully and babysitting them and everything. So you get both parents in the workplace. And now, because of the economy, both parents might be working 2 jobs. They can't spend any time at home, hardly. Can't spend any time educating their kids. They're just hoping that the school is doing a bang-up job, which they're not, of educating their children in a public school setting. And so the moments they have at home, again, they're catching flybys. When they get the chance to look at their phone, they're catching clips. They're not getting the full argument. They're not getting all the details because the system is so inherently broken and corrupted. And we have an awful financial policy. Our monetary policy is horrible. And the government has put such constraints on people's time because you got to work the first 4 months of the year just to pay your taxes. And then you get, or maybe it might be 5 months now. The other 7 months is yours. And again, people are working multiple jobs. And so they don't have time to spend with their kids and educate them on right and wrong, what are facts, what is fantasy, all these things. So the parents have had to give over the reins to government-run institutions to educate their kids. Their kids are coming home, and maybe unbeknownst to the parents, what the heck they're being told at school. And they're just crossing their fingers, hoping that they haven't heard anything really ignorant or, just completely and utterly false. And so, yeah, I think since women's lib and since, the women getting into the workforce and government basically becoming the babysitter, I think that's when it's all started. And it's just gotten, compoundingly worse than what it started out. It's worked great in the government's favor. And as far as the family goes, it's done almost irreversible harm.
So just a little bit of pushback on that. Like I guess my point was one of my main a point of reference would be like when the protests for the Vietnam War became very serious. Like I guess I'll start with like when the Vietnam War first started out, it seemed like everyone back then was paying attention to it, right? Like everyone during the Vietnam War era, the whole war, whether you were for it or against it, whether you were out to kill the communists or you were out to save our American troops and bring everybody home, everyone was paying attention in some way or another. Everyone had an opinion on it, but everyone paid attention and everyone cared about the war in Vietnam. Like every night on the news, something would come up about it and everyone paid attention. Versus now, when things happen, like in Ukraine and Gaza, like when I talk to these people about like wars all across the world or like the national debt crisis and the mounds and mounds of spending we have, not only do the people have not heard about what I'm talking about, like I'll be like, oh, did you see that Israel bombed Gaza City like 2 days ago? Like I was telling this to a coworker today. I was like, did you see that they went north again, back up to Gaza City, and they're rebombing the tents in Gaza City? And they were like, no. And not only did they say no, they didn't really seem to care. And I just feel like 50 years ago, which is well after the women's suffrage, but like, I feel like 50 years ago, people would have cared about these things. Like if you were to take the debt crisis that we have now and rewind the clocks back to 1975, I feel like there would be real panic about it. Like people would be as concerned about it as they should be. And I feel like nowadays there is not that level of like, there's just no concern for real issues anymore. And my opinion on it is that somewhere along the line, just the American populace decided they wanted to be entertained more than they wanted to be informed.
Yeah, I think, this is a generational issue. That generation was much more concerned about the welfare of the nation. But again, the late 70s, early 80s, the economy was kind of crap. But somehow or another, well, we know how it has come to pass. But as generations go on, what is taught in school is the government is supposed to do these things. Let them take care of it. And they're not taught really the Bill of Rights. They're not taught that we're a constitutional republic. They're not taught a lot of things. They're taught to have faith and trust in the government. And then, okay, now you got to do all this. You got to pass the standardized test so you can go to college and get a good job. And then that's been complete garbage. People are getting, degrees in awful fields and get out of college and can't get a job, but they're loaded with student debt. And so, oh God, I got to find a job and maybe 2 or 3 to pay off my student debt, do all these things. just generationally, they have just bombarded the people with so much crap and burdened them with, and partly sometimes the people are partly to blame by burdening themselves with so much debt that it's just, I got to work. I got to keep a roof over my head. I got to keep my family fed. And everything else beyond that, I think, is just like, oh my God, I can't take any more bad news. And so they just don't want to hear it. And when they get time off, as you were alluding to a minute ago, they'd rather have their entertainment and not hear that we give money to a foreign nation to commit atrocities in another nation, or we're propping up a government and fighting a proxy war with Russia. They just don't want to hear it. I think people feel so defeated right now because of how hard they have to struggle to make ends meet that they just, to think about any other depressing thing, they're just like, I don't. So they're just going to unplug from reality. They're going to soak in the entertainment till it's time to go to bed and get up the next day and go back to work again, put their nose to the grindstone, and maybe have those short conversations at work. But outside of work, I think everything around a lot of people, and even me sometimes, I'm like, God, this just... Yes, I do. We do a show once a week, and sometimes it sucks to have to sit here and dig through the news because you're just like, my God, what is going on with this world? And you have to immerse yourself in it. You have to read the articles. You have to dig through information so you can try to enlighten other people. I don't know about you, Brandon. I'm not what you consider like a comedic genius, but I'd rather come on here and just talk about funny topics all day and not have to cover what we're covering. But I think it's just everything is at such a level, and people think that the world, rightfully so, has gone mad. And I think it's easier for them to just go, I just want to watch TikTok videos or whatever and be entertained until I go to sleep, or sit home, watch a movie, than to hear more depressing news and just feel like the world's just come crashing down on their heads. Again, I kind of get it, but if you have a family and you have kids, in my opinion, I don't want my kids to grow up in a world that's worse than what I inherited. I want my kids to grow up in a world that's better than the one that I was born into. But a lot of people, unless it's Republican, Democrat issues that they can fight about, that really at the end of the day, a lot of them aren't going to change anything fundamentally. Some of them will, and a lot of them are stupid, petty arguments. They just can't seem to bring themselves to care because it's just too much anymore. Because every time you turn on you turn on the news, it's all bad news. There's hardly any good news. The major media outlets make their money off bad news and fighting and deflecting and redirecting your attention to other crap and not allowing you to think about how do we fix this. It's, oh my God. So they just turn it off. And like you said a while ago, they catch brief little glimpses. They get, some 15-minute clip and they form an opinion on something they've seen with missing 90% of the facts, and then they move on.
A couple things I want to say is I understand what you're saying. I do, and I believe what you're saying to some degree for sure. But it's never been easier. I would honestly say that things had been getting progressively better in America every year until about 2019. And then since then, we've kind of gone a downhill a little bit as far as like certain things we enjoy and do. But we live in an age of information and convenience. Like, we've never lived in such a time where finding the truth can be so easy. It used to be finding the truth was almost impossible, if not impossible at times. Like, there wasn't, like, you'd have a library, but libraries are all books that had to have been written and published and sent out, and someone had to have had someone pay for them to publish the book, or they'd have to get to a newspaper where they'd have to actually, like, find an editor who would let them write newspaper articles, and then you'd have to promote that, and someone would have to go find it. Nowadays, if you want to find the truth on anything, you can. Well, Google's making it a little harder. But if you go on Twitter or if you go on YouTube and you just search long enough, I mean, not even long enough, for like 10 or 15 minutes, you can find the truth on any topic out there. And also, like I said a minute ago, we live in an age of such convenience where if you want to live in the city, you can live in the city. If you want to live in the suburbs, you can live in the suburbs. If you want to work in the food industry or the healthcare industry or all these other industries, you can go do them like when my grandma went back to college to be a nurse at the age of 40 with 4 kids living at her house. There's no, I mean, it almost feels lazy that my generation is like, things are so hard, we just can't bear to pay attention any longer. Things have been going on, like the Trail of Tears, historically speaking, wasn't that long ago. Terrible, terrible things have been happening like throughout all of history forever. And we live in an era where when terrible things happen to the average person, they get exposed quicker than ever. Like it can expose a racist on social media in 20 minutes, have them fired from their job, and they lose their social status in life and all these other things. And so, in my opinion, I think social media has also made people lazy in a sense that, like, instead of going out to be an activist, you can just post on social media. You can just comment on no, I'm not hating our YouTube commenters. Love you guys. Seriously. But if all you're doing to fight against the grievances, to fight against the deep state and the corruption in America, if all you're doing is post about it on social media, all the bureaucrats have to do is ignore you. And you lose. And so I feel like social media and the internet has made people lazy with both. Well, just the age of convenience has made people lazy, and then the internet has given the lazy people a way out instead of actually fighting for change, like going into the streets, knocking, calling your congressman, writing your congressman, protesting outside of their door instead of on a college campus where it's convenient for you. Go somewhere where it's not convenient for you to protest next time. If you want to, just making change it's not something for lazy people, and it's just young people in America today are full of lazy people, in my opinion.
Well, this comment has been made many times too. You said, you've got this little device right here in the palm of your hand, and the information's at your fingertips. But because we've made things so easy for people, the saying starts out, soft times create soft people. That's what it's done. Devices like a smartphone or the internet, where, anything that gets on the internet gives you access to information, that's easy. But because we have so many programs for people where they don't have to put in the work, and you've got this information at your fingertips, but you'd rather just, again, go to social media, get your news. Instead of doing a web search, you can just peruse Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and, oh, there's something. Read a little bit. Okay, I'm good. If times were much tougher, and I'm talking when it's too late, because right now it's not too late, but in the future it's too late. When it's too late, those people will be like, oh, what happened? Bro, why do you think we're sitting here? We've got family and friends we could hang out. Why do you think we've been sitting here telling you these things? It's not because we think the government's awesome and we're telling you, even though these programs are awful and they steal from certain people and give to others, that we think that's okay. No, we've been telling you how awful things are, but because you haven't seen it yet, you haven't really seen how bad it is. It hasn't affected you personally. The only thing that seems to be affecting everybody is the inflationary period that we're going through now. That was supposed to be transitory. But anyway, so if they go to the grocery store, they go to the gas station, they feel it, right? They see it. Outside of that, foreign policy, no one's dropping bombs on us. No big deal. No one's, we don't have warring factions driving through our town and destroying everything. No biggie. That's the problem. It's been a problem for years. Yeah, Vietnam was so personal because we just saw thousands upon thousands of U.S. soldiers coming back in body bags. or maimed. You had Agent Orange, the amounts of PTSD and everything. It was hard not to notice. But because of technological advances and the amount of, U.S. soldiers, one is too many in a crappy foreign war, don't get me wrong. But the numbers of soldiers we lose compared to what we used to lose, that number's lower. And since it doesn't seem to be affecting them at all, people just shrug it off. And it's going to have to, unfortunately, it has to bite way more people in the butt. And way more people have to be affected by these bad policies before they go, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. I'm a U.S. citizen. What is your problem? And by then, it is too late. But I think that's it. It's soft times create soft people, and our foreign policy, for the most part, does not affect the majority of the U.S. citizens, and some of our other policies haven't affected the majority of the people in the country. And so they're going to ignore it until it bites them in the butt. And that's been going on for a long time. But I think that's one of the major problems that we're facing right now. It just hasn't absolutely come home to roost yet, to where people are like, COVID should have been it. When you watch suicides and overdoses skyrocket, all these other medical issues that were being dealt with and that were on the decline skyrocket, people losing their jobs, people losing their business. That should have been the wake-up call to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And all those people should have been, invested into what their government is doing and keeping up on it. But because the media is so good at like, oh, we won the war against COVID and it's all over and people are going back to work, a lot of them have put that to the back burner. It's gone down the memory hole because it's not affecting them anymore. It's like things have to constantly grind on people and pound them into the dirt. No matter what's going on, they have to constantly be being bombarded by awful things that affect their ability to go to work or travel or see their loved ones or whatever before they'll fight back. And since that was just a couple, 2.5 year period of time, and now it's gone and everybody's pretending like it never happened, and these folks are going on an apology tour, here we go. We're back to it again, where people are ignoring the facts in front of them.
Just a quick question for you. If you do you think things are worse now for the American people? It's hard to compare the two, really, but like the grievances that the founding fathers had in the Declaration of Independence, would the grievances we had now against our government be worse than the one they had in the Declaration of Independence?
Abso-freaking-lutely. They went over, they went ballistic on what, a 3% tax? And dumped tea into the harbor for a 3% tax? And we have people in like California, between federal and state, is over 50% of their wages are gone. Yeah, we definitely have way more grievances and we have way more problems than what the founders had with the government of, the crown. And again, because I don't know if it's people just have become complacent or like, well, this is the way it is now because of all the entertainment. And even though, again, there's a device that you hold in your hand every day that can tell you, doing 10 minutes of research can show you what is actually going on if you choose to do so. But because we're not actively, there's no government forces over here from another country attacking us and a war going on. We don't have a civil war. We don't have a revolutionary war going on in this country. And because it's all happening across the sea, and because people think their rights come from government, that they're just like, well, our government sucks, but what are you going to do? I feel like that's the attitude, because so much of this stuff is happening overseas and it's not directly affecting, war is not directly affecting millions of people in this country, even though it is monetarily, but physically. We don't see bombs dropping in cities and gunfights in cities everywhere between warring factions that people are just like, well, it sucks, but it could be worse. Like, yeah, sit around on your hands for a little bit, and it will be.
Well, also, like I said earlier, their big push against it would be from their phone in their living room. Hey, I don't like that you're doing that. That's your big fight back against the government is, hey, I don't like what you're doing. Which again, I'm not all acts of fighting the government for liberty are good acts. Like, I'm not diminishing the people who also fight the battle on the internet, because it's where you change minds. It's where you can have the discussion with people you can't normally have the discussion with, like people from other states and other countries. And it is a good way to like grow the message of liberty. But if that's all you're doing, like I said before, if all you're doing to combat the military industrial complex and all these other forces is just sending the tweet, is just making the post on Facebook, all you're doing is validating everyone else doing the same thing as you. Like if you post something and you're in like groups that like you like and follow each other's posts where all you're doing is sitting in your echo chamber talking about how we're all fed up with this. But if you're not putting it in their face, if you're not making it inconvenient for those in charge, then you're not wasting your time per se, but you're not really advancing liberty in any meaningful way.
No, yeah, I'll agree. There's way more work needs to be done by way more, a lot more people, because of one simple thing. There are so many, and we're down to like 4.5 minutes, so we're gonna have to close this up pretty soon. But we have way more many problems and a much more multifaceted war that we're fighting right now for liberty. It's monetary, it's foreign policy, it's domestic policy. I mean, every time you turn around, the government is pushing something down our throats. And so we need a lot more people to become involved, because we need a lot of people focusing on multiple fronts of a war for freedom and liberty in this country. And until people decide that is what's the most important thing to do, which our founders admonished us to guard the jewel of liberty for anybody who might want to take even just a little piece. Keep an eye on those people. Don't let them have it. That's what we were told that in so many different ways by so many different people who helped found this nation. And because times have been too easy, they're like, well, and when you have the TSA things and all this, well, I haven't done anything. People get complacent. Well, I haven't done anything wrong. I have nothing to hide, so it's okay. Okay, so you're cool with people being molested at the airport, and if you take big gobs, if you're transporting large sums of money in a suitcase, and then you get the suitcase when you land at your destination, and the money's gone because it was stolen by a TSA agent, and, well, I don't know. It was that safety that they've proven like 95% of the time when they do something to see if the TSA catches it, they don't. Do you think maybe that's a problem? And maybe,
right, like you said,
it's unnecessary?
It's time for people to start recognizing when rights are being violated before it happens to you. Like you were saying a minute ago with like, it's got to grind individuals so hard before, in nowadays, before they become fed up, that it's time for people to start looking at other people, like actually putting yourself in someone else's shoes again, not just outside objector. Well, this is, oh man, that would be bad if it was happening to me. You should stand up and fight as if it's happening to you. That's what I'm doing with my campaign, is I'm standing up and fighting, not because my life is so bad. I mean, yeah, I have my own grievances with taxes and the wars and whatnot, but comparatively speaking, I live a pretty good life. I'm fed every day. I only work 40 hours a week. I come home to a very beautiful fiance. I have all of the entertainment in the world at my fingertips, but I stand up and fight, and I'm running for office, not for me, but for all of the people that I put myself in their shoes, for all of the people who have their rights violated, for all of the people fed up with the military industrial complex. And I'm fighting for the Constitution and standing for the people in my district, but I'm also fighting for what's right across the world too. Fighting to do what's right and standing for an advocate for a positive message across the whole world for all of the people who are grieved by America and its policies.
Yes, sir. All right, folks. Well, that we had a very, very, very lively discussion tonight, as it's good as always. And I mean, I hope the rest of you are enjoying the fact that I have Brandon on now, and we're doing this co-hosting thing every week. Like I said, I told Brandon off air that he saves me, because there's weeks that I'm so dadgum tired by the time it's Friday night at 6:30, and then having someone on here to have a conversation with keeps me perked up, keeps me going. And so I hope you all are enjoying this new way of doing the show, because I certainly do. And I look forward to what's going to happen with this show in the future. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. For all of those who listen by radio, podcast, or watch on YouTube or Rumble, thank you so much for your continued support. And we'll see you all next Friday, right on the Missouri Liberty Report.